Good to have you with us. A second suspect has been arrested for the rape and murder of a Western Cape teenager. 17-year-old Anine Boyson was found barely alive in an industrial area of Bredasdorp this past weekend. She'd been raped and mutilated. Before she died on Saturday night, she identified her ex-boyfriend as one of her attackers. He was arrested shortly afterwards. Last night, police apprehended a second suspect. Both now face charges of rape and murder. Police say they're likely to make more arrests soon. More on this now, and from Johannesburg we're joined by Nomboniso Gasa from the Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution. Nomboniso, this is a terrible story. No wonder it's causing so much outrage.
Yes, it is indeed. And it is a story that is heart-wrenching. And remember, it comes a few days after the 13-year-old in Limpopo was married off. But the story is just painful.
No surprise that groups like the ANC Youth League, even the presidency, reacting with outrage today. What is it about this story that prompts a reaction like this?
Well, I mean, it is so graphic. It is, I mean, what has happened to this young woman, how vulnerable she is and how she's been taken advantage of, but also the form of the gang, the kinds of injuries, what was done to her. I think it is shocking even for a country like ours, which has such high level of sexual violence and sexual abuse against women and girls. I do think that we are, as a country, reaching a point of a saturation point where we have to say this and no further. And it is important that the President has released a statement, but I think we need to go beyond outrage. I think what we need is to really ask very hard questions about what is going on in the society and why is this young girl, this young woman, why has she experienced this? Why are people becoming so brutal? But most importantly, what are we going to do?
COPE trying to get some political mileage out of this, blaming government. Is the system failing South African women?
Well, I mean, that is not even a doubt. You know, the system, the criminal justice system in its entirety is failing South African people, period. And it is failing the victims of sexual abuse. It is failing the children. I mean, we saw the statement released by the MEC in the Western Cape saying that, you know, although the MEC is not saying that women should not be out at 3 or they deserve to be sexually molested at 3 a.m., but really they need to be cautious. So once you have those kinds of ifs and buts and try to balance this thing in the same way, it makes people even more outraged because, in fact, in some ways that can be read as saying, well, you know, you've got to know your place. But I think most importantly, we need to emphasize the fact that our criminal justice system, despite the legal framework, despite the policies that we have, it's failing us dismally.
But what could have been done to prevent this teenager's rape and murder?
Well, I think every case often depends on what has happened before. And I think that if the South African government is serious and all the other players, if we are showing that we are serious when we are saying we no longer can afford even a single child being abused, if we are serious in saying that the justice must take its course, if we are serious in saying that the special courts, which, by the way, are supposed to be in existence by law, and if we can have those for World Cup and we can have those for AFCON, but yet we don't have those for victims of sexual violence, and our rate of conviction or even the case making it to court, it is so nil. All those things, I'm afraid, they build to a situation where more and more people are going to be abused, more and more people are going to suffer this kind of abuse and this kind of abuse that leads to injuries and the kind of murder that we have seen. So I think, in as much as it might sound harsh, but I do think that government needs to take a very serious look at itself and say, what is it that is not happening in this country that ought to be happening? We as citizens need to ask ourselves very, very hard questions. I mean, are we a society that has a high tolerance level of sexual abuse and murder?
Part of the problem is that we've become so desensitized to sex crimes.
Well, I think we have. I think we haven't. I think that the few people who are talking, they're getting very tired because we have a number of laws in this country. We have a number of policies that that have long been put in place, but we don't have political will. And there is nothing that we can do or we can see happening unless there's political will. So I appreciate that the president has expressed outrage. I appreciate that the president has said that this is inhumane, this cannot be allowed to happen. But, you know, I also want to ask, what is it that you do to contribute towards this high level of tolerance of rape in our society? What is it that you do to ensure that this doesn't happen? Look, there are so many departments that are implicated here, right? Social development has answers to questions to answer, safety and security, women, children, and people with disability. I mean, all these departments, I think we need to ask hard questions as South Africans. I think we need to say that whatever laws that you have and whatever levels of outrage you have, you are the president, you are the minister, you have the power. And I think we need to say very, very unequivocally to the MEC in the Western Cape that as a nation, we are offended. You know, and as long as you have those statements, and these are kinds of statements that we saw in India, by the way, where also it was said that, you know, this girl should not have been out at night. And, you know, even if you want to say people must be streetwise, this is not the time to say that, because if you say that in the same breath as you are condemning this, in many ways, you are making a qualifier. So I think that we need an apology from that MEC. I think that we need to say to the Minister of Women, Children and People with Disability, so many children are being abused. Last week we saw the 13-year-old in Limpopo. Today we see a child who has been murdered, a girl who has been murdered. And we need to say to them, look, this is not on. In any country, a minister must step up and take responsibility.
Nomboniso Gasa from the Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution, thank you very much indeed for sharing your views this afternoon.